You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Did you just look down at your phone? You did it again, didn't you? You know, you're flying down the road in a 3-ton hunk of steel, and a text takes your eyes off the road for an average of 5 seconds. At 55 miles per hour, that's long enough to travel the length of a football field and cause some serious damage. Turn it off. Trust me, whatever it is, you'll live.
Learn more at stoptextsstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Okay, forest animals, kids are coming to the forest, and it's up to us to make their visit a good one. Sparrow, have you practiced the most popular bird songs for the year?
Of course.
Catchy. I like it. River, how's the temperature?
It's a refreshing 52 degrees, man.
I love it. Turtle.
He's not here yet, man.
He's late every morning. Okay. Squirrel.
The forest has been preparing just for you. To learn more about cool things to do in the forest, visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
I am incredibly proud to be a physician here at St. Jude. To be in a place where I know my patients are going to get the top-notch care. Not only care, but also research happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every single person that contributes is a part of that St. Jude family that makes that happen. Because of everyone that is really committed to the mission of St. Jude, we're giving families hope.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the Jenn and Rick Show on KLRNRadio.com. But actually tonight, this is going to be a girl show. This is going to be Jenn and Ann.
Jenn and Ann? Ann ain't here. It's Jenn and Jess.
Oh, shoot. I was messaging with Ann, and I completely... Okay, my bad. I was messaging with Ann about the change today because our awesome Rick Robinson has been asked to fill in on KOKC 1520 out of Oklahoma City the last several days. And because of that, which is why we didn't have a show on Tuesday, because he had to be at the station at like an ungodly hour, like 5 a.m. And so because of that, he then did so well that they invited him back tomorrow. So he is not able to be here tonight because, again, he has those early morning radio hours because it's the drive time show. And so Ann and I were talking, and she was trying to figure out if we could still do the show tonight because I wanted to still do the show tonight. So then she was hooking me up with Jess to do the show with Jess. So I have Jessie on with me, and so we're going to have a little bit of a different kind of Jenn and Rick tonight because it's
a ladies' takeover. It is a
Exactly.
ladies' takeover.
It is. So it'll be fun. But we just want to give the biggest congratulations to Rick because not only did he get the offer, which is awesome in and of itself, he has killed it the last 2 days, so much so that they invited him back tomorrow for a third unexpected day. And he is having the time of his life. Yeah, we are so excited for him. And it's just
amazing. It really is.
Isn't it just such a cool, we all know how long he's been doing this and how hard he's worked, and he's tried to make as many connections as he can and stay true to himself. And it seems like at least if all he ever gets to do is like fill in a little bit for a while, it seems like this is going to probably produce into something more. And, but it just seems like a lot of hard work and perseverance paying off.
Yes, all his hard work is finally paying off. Now, I have some audio clips from his first day.
Yes.
I haven't transferred the clips from the second day into my soundboard yet. I'll see if I can do that during the commercial break at the bottom of the hour. But Here's the first day audio clips that I played on my show on AOTR last night. I've done so many shows this week, Jen. I'm getting my shows confused.
So for everyone that doesn't know, Jess has been picking up the slack, and she's done a couple of the America Off the Rails shows this week to fill in for Rick because obviously he could not be expected to stay up until 11 and midnight, having to go in so early. So she's been helping pick up some of the slack. So if you haven't checked out any of those, obviously those are on podcast and you can go back and listen.
Yep, iHeart, iTunes, Spotify. Yes, Spotify now.
And I know, it's so cool.
Just about everywhere else podcasts can be found.
I know, it's been really great. Everyone's been working really hard to make this happen. And it's just really cool that whenever I am talking to someone that maybe doesn't do Apple, so they don't do iTunes, or maybe they're not really familiar with iHeart. There's so many platforms now for us to say, here's where our shows are available. And at least one of them, someone is more in tune with, and is like, oh yeah, cool, I can add that there. So it's been really great. The station has been working hard for us on our behalf, on all the show's behalf, and I know I appreciate it.
That's been an Ann project.
Yeah, no, she is knocking it out of the park here.
She doesn't come on air. She hides from the microphone. She's called in like one time. But when it comes to getting the shows put everywhere she can imagine, that's been her thing. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I love that, like, all this.
And by the way,
the scenes.
Jenn and Rick's on Spotify too,
I just heard. So that's really cool. I'm really excited. But yeah, she's always doing all this behind the scenes stuff for us and everything. And like I said, she was orchestrating how we were going to do this show tonight, or, connecting me with Jesse and everything. And so, which is why I was like, wait, no, it's Jesse, because you and I just got on air. I mean, we just connected like 5 minutes ago, right before we got on the show.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
but anyways,
let's play those clips of Rick
you.
from his first day at KOKC. Now, here is him doing the intro.
Terrestrial radio.
And I kept waiting for him to mess up the call letters. He didn't. He was great. He must have had a Post-it in front of him or something.
For sure.
Good morning, Oklahoma. I am Rick Robinson. You are listening to KOKC 1520, Talk Radio's new generation. We are live right now. I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday morning. We've got a good show lined up for you today. I'll be filling in for the morning show.
That was so cool to hear for the very first time.
That's our boy.
Yes. Now,
don't you just kind of feel like that? I'm like, that's my boy. That's my boy.
Oh, he's had Alan Ray's called in.
Yeah, Al told me he was going to do that.
Various other people have called in. He gave a shout out to Ron, our most loyal listener ever. I mean, because.
So if anybody hasn't listened to, maybe I know this is kind of how it happens sometimes. Like you like a certain person, you've seen them on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and so you tune into their show, and maybe you haven't branched out to some of the rest of them, and maybe you don't kind of get the dynamic, or you just don't know that there's such a dynamic at the station. That this is what I will tell you about all the, like, saying that Al's called in, saying that one of our other listeners is listening cross country to this. Is that, the support that we all have for each other is just really genuine, and it's enthusiastic, and, everyone is excited whenever anyone has some sort of extra endeavor that goes on. And I think that the camaraderie between all the different hosts and the producers and the station manager and everybody is just, it's just such a great environment here at KLRN Radio. And I think that by the way that this has all gone, and people filling in for him and everything, that it really shows that. So I would like people to know that even though there's kind of a wide variety here, and that, there's a lot going on with KLRNRadio.com, we really are a support system, and we really are all kind of in this together. I mean, we want everyone to do well and succeed, and then we want the station to succeed. So it's a really good feeling.
It is. It's almost like a virtual family. Now, this was Frosty, the guy he was talking with last day on the air as producer. And so here he was when Frosty asked him to explain a little bit about himself.
I'm looking at Frosty, who I've met before.
Yeah. So Rick, who are you? What's your deal, man?
So I wasn't sure if I was going to be allowed to really talk about that, so I'm glad you opened the door.
Tell us who he is.
So anyway, for those of you who don't know, I've actually been doing talk radio in an online format, and even in some terrestrial markets, for nearly a decade now. Actually, it all started as a Facebook page. I got really, really cranky, started looking at all the crazy politics going on, realized nobody was listening to anybody anymore, and realized that Facebook was going to be a good way to maybe get some people's attention. One of the pages we started took off almost immediately and eventually became a podcast, and the rest is history. I now run an online radio network. I have podcasts on not Alexa. Well, technically, yes, but on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and pretty much everywhere else you can find podcasts.
So you're just all over the place.
Pretty much.
Very cool, my man.
I'm the guy who's everywhere that nobody's heard of.
There you go.
I love that line at the end. I'm the guy who's everywhere that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, me too. That was actually pretty perfect.
It was. It was just absolutely an amazing way to wrap it up because those podcasts are everywhere. I mean, I literally don't know a podcast network you can't find our shows.
Right. No, it's so many. Tune in, iTunes, all the things. But also, I was going to say something that maybe a lot of people don't quite know is that part of why I think this is so awesome for Rick also is because he is so completely
dedicated.
Well, yes, but he's so involved on so many levels. So for people that don't know, like he's not only like doing his shows and such, but then he's also doing he's producing a lot of shows. He does a lot of mixing. He does some stuff for the Loftus Party, for Michael Loftus. If y'all don't know him, check that out. I mean, there's just so many pots he has his hand in the scenes, even just for the station. He's just involved in a lot more than I think people understand from just hearing his voice on the radio. He is completely dedicated to every part of this medium.
Yeah, he's just absolutely amazing, and he does so many things that people don't realize. Everything from producing multiple shows, Loftus, Foo, to he produces for our own Grouchy, G Nation. He does so many things behind the scenes. He's also the program director here at the station, which is something most people don't realize. So he's responsible for bringing in the new shows.
And he's been involved in the advertising aspect and getting sponsors. Like, I mean, he's really multifaceted in how he is trying to propel this station, all of our people, and just in general, the idea of like a better way to do talk radio.
And it's just amazing to finally get to see him succeed. So I'm so happy for him. Yes, it's been some extra work for me, but I will admit, U.S. politics is so much easier than foreign affairs.
What you normally do. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it takes me like 30 minutes of show prep to put together the U.S. politics thing. And it takes me like an hour and a half to put together one of my shows.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the international stuff, I often have to give a mini history lesson of what's the deal with Gaza and the West Bank and how did they come to be and what's the big deal with the 67 borders in Israel. Whereas with the U.S., I don't have to explain how Kentucky came to be a state.
Correct. And if anybody hasn't really listened to some of Jessie's shows, I encourage you to go back and listen to some of her stuff, particularly on the Middle East and then North Korea. I mean, you did a couple shows back when there was the summit and whatnot that just really were so informative for someone that sees the headlines but doesn't really get into the background of it all.
Well, what was really amazing was during the North-South Korean summit, my husband was on the Korean Peninsula.
Right. I didn't know if you were going to put that out there, but yes.
I did.
I guess you did on your show. I forgot you did do it on your show.
I did. I mentioned it a couple times on air, and it was just one of those things of he went from every 3 to 4 recalls a week because he is part of air defense. He would be one of the first people to fire to shoot down anything incoming from North Korea. To having to be there, be ready because they thought something was going to kick off, to having to be at work 3 to 4 times a week to it's all quiet.
Yeah, that is an amazing little piece of insight that you have that obviously the majority of Americans do not. So like I said, y'all go back and look up some of those shows because they were so informative and really spelled out a lot of things that you're not going to hear in your everyday media coverage.
And that's why I like doing what I do, because I'm able to dig a little deeper. I have so many military friends. I still know at least 2 people on the peninsula that I can tap on the shoulder and go, hey, what's it feel like? What's going on? What's the emotions? What's this, that, the other?
Right. Right. Well, and even let me relate this back to, because everyone remembers how Rick and spent so much time on Harvey and all of the things that were going on there. And for anyone that doesn't know, like Jessie was a huge help to me in getting some reach out there about that and using some of her connections because I was really big in helping like the Cajun and Texas Navy and then actual like, national and people that were there on official posts. And then also people that were just volunteering, and she helped me with her network and mine combined to get to get the word out there more and to highlight some charities and to highlight some volunteer opportunities and all of that. So
I even contacted a rock band I know. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
If that ain't the kicker, I don't know what is.
Again, this is just showing how much like our station, like we all work together and especially for each other's causes and passions.
All right. Now, there was one other thing that I thought Rick did on the first day that was really classy, and I want to play it.
I just want to take a second to say thank you to Mac Mullins for giving me a shot to do this today. It's an honor to sit in and do this show. I've actually listened pretty much since the format change.
He went out of his way to thank the person that gave him the shot on air.
And by the way, this is how you do it, people. This is how you endear yourself to not only the people that are connected, but also how you endear yourself to an audience.
Exactly.
We have seen this on a regular basis. We know his abilities on this front. But I'm glad that other people are taking notice and starting to understand, like, truly how great, Rick Robinson is, and not just with his on-air speaking and his topics and the way in which he approaches all the various matters, but also in how he is humble, he is kind, he is loyal, sometimes almost to a fault, which is not a bad thing in my book, and is really such a positive person, and it will help anybody and everybody, and thank everyone that should be thanked, but a lot of people don't do.
But I mean, the cool thing about it is I've been listening, and I'm not a morning person, so I've been like giving up sacrificing sleep to listen. After staying up late to cover for shows, I've been getting up early and listening. Now, I do record the show at the same time, so if I nod off for a moment, which, yes, I did a couple times, both days, but I can go back and listen later. And what was really cool was he's like, okay, I know people are going to turn off the radio, but I didn't vote for Trump. But I used to be a never Trumper, but I've changed because he's now piloting the plane. And so he not only explains his views, he explains why he changed his mind. And you just don't see that in normal media.
Well, right. Like there's too much ego involved, right? And so I would classify myself as still slightly more anti-Trump in general than Rick is. But here's something that he and I both try to do. We really do try to take each situation as it comes, and we try to look at it for what it is and not based off of our personal feelings on the man. We try to look at it. And towards the end of Obama, I wasn't on Twitter, I wasn't on air, I wasn't doing any of these things. But I started realizing my penchant for that I didn't want to dislike someone and dislike everything they do just because it's them. And I think that's a real issue with a lot of people in this political climate, is that they're too easy and too quick to dismiss something being done by a particular politician, a party, just the administration, whatever it is, simply because they dislike the one person in charge, the leader, or that politician, or this politician, or whatever. And I have, I think, in a way, matured in my political viewpoints to be able to say, and this is something that Rick and I both kind of pride ourselves on, to be able to say, I don't like that he said this, but I do like that this was said and that this was done. And that even though I strongly dislike even sometimes the reasoning for it, the ultimate result was good in my book. And so I'm going to try to look at this more justly. I'm going to try to be more fair about this and take out some of the personal parts of it and put back in the like analytical approach.
And the analytical approach is so important. I mean, you have to admit, and I know you're probably just as stunned as I am, that North Korea actually handed over the remains. And believe it or not, they're actually in relatively good shape from everything I've heard and read and everybody I've talked to. But that is an amazing thing. And I think,
and it is,
if my audio clips are labeled properly, this is Secretary Mattis discussing it.
Okay.
Clearly, what we have here is something that has been frozen for years now. And so that's warmed up. The remains were turned over as agreed during as initiated and agreed during the summit that President Trump had with Chairman Kim. It was a coordination effort over the last month that we determined where they would deliver the remains to, where our plane would fly in, where they would be taken to for the initial review. So all of that went well, and I think when you have that sort of communication going on, it sets a positive environment, a positive tone.
I mean, the fact that we got the bodies back, and here's the thing, and I don't know if you realize this, Jen, we got 55 boxes of remains back. Sometimes North Korea commingles remains because they're uncertain or they were initially buried in mass graves in the same box. So we may have 35 bodies, we may have 135. Now they only sent back one set of dog tags, but they sent back 55 boxes of remains. And I don't know if you saw the pictures from Osan Air Base and how full the streets were the day those remains were brought in.
Wow. I mean, this is true. This is truly monumental. And you know what? I have to say that, number one, I'm really glad that this was done. And I will be very upfront about the fact that I will thank President Trump for orchestrating this and you know, from what we can tell, because we've been asking for so many years, what we can tell, this is his accomplishment or his administration's accomplishment. And if it had been someone else's, I would be still thankful. I would still be grateful. I would still be just supportive of the fact that and acknowledging the fact that an administration made this happen. And you know, I'm still not discounting that North Korea is playing games in all sorts of levels. But as far as this goes, I don't really care right now because I think that it is such an important thing to so many families and just to Americans in general when we've lost people in war to be able to bring them home and rightfully mourn them and rest them peacefully in a way in which it is conducive to their family's traditions. And so I think that anyone who is wanting to make this a for or against thing politically is quite despicable in my opinion.
And you know me, Jen, my heart is with the soldier. My heart is with their family because I know what it's like. And yeah, North Korea is flat out playing silly buggers. I mean, I don't know how, I'm going to sum this up as quick as I can because this is not my show. Before the summit, when KJU made the trip to China, Kim Jong-un made the trip to China, while he was there, they started up a second nuclear reactor. Came back, he held the meetings, then afterwards, he got rid of 2 sites he was done with. The nuclear test site that had essentially collapsed in on itself, potentially killing up to 200 North Korean workers, and was essentially no longer usable. So they destroyed it. Okay, well, you can't use it anyway, so what skin off your nose was that? And the missile engine test site. It was just the engine test site, where they tested the engines for their ICBMs. And point of fact, the Hwasong-14 has the engine power it needs to reach the continental United States. From what I've heard, it's the re-entry vehicle that still is driving them crazy. Thank you. They have not figured that out. So
Yeah.
he destroyed two test sites he didn't need. Isn't that
Right.
called taking out the trash, or am I missing something?
No, it really is. And back to your point of saying, oh, this isn't your show, so you don't want to get too far off on this. No, but this is a show we're doing together. And so I appreciate having your commentary and insight on things that we don't always have on Jen and Rick. So this is kind of both our shows tonight. So we're going to talk about some of those things that we're not always able to get in depth on Jen and Rick. So don't look at it like that.
Well, guess what, Jen? You know what time it is?
We're ready to break.
Yes, it is time to pay those radio station bills. So I pulled out a classic Jen and Rick bumper just because I like it. And we will see you on the other side.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Did you just look down at your phone? You did it again, didn't you? You know, you're flying down the road in a 3-ton hunk of steel, and a text takes your eyes off the road for an average of 5 seconds. At 55 miles per hour, that's long enough to travel the length of a football field and cause some serious damage. Turn it off. Trust me, whatever it is, you'll live.
Learn more at stoptextsstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Okay, forest animals, kids are coming to the forest, and it's up to us to make their visit a good one. Sparrow, have you practiced the most popular bird songs for the year?
Of course.
Catchy. I like it. River, how's the temperature?
It's a refreshing 52 degrees, man.
I love it. Turtle.
He's not here yet, man.
He's late every morning. Okay. Squirrel.
The forest has been preparing just for you. To learn more about cool things to do in the forest, visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
I am incredibly proud to be a physician here at St. Jude. To be in a place where I know my patients are going to get the top-notch care, not only care, but also research happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every single person that contributes is a part of that St. Jude family that makes that happen. Because of everyone that is really committed to the mission of St. Jude, we're giving families hope.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
And I've had my in-laws.
Thank you for hanging in there with us while we paid those radio station bills. And yes, Jen was just talking about how much she was jonesing to get back on the air. Nothing illegal.
Well, here's the thing, y'all. So my in-laws, my son's birthday was this last weekend, and he turned 5. So good Lord, we made it to 5 years, and he is still seeming like being a somewhat normal human being. So good for that. But I've had my in-laws in town all week. So despite, Rick needing off because of the early morning radio show, I actually needed Tuesday off anyways because they were in town, and we've already coordinating so many different things and schedules and stuff and trying to keep our schedule a little bit normal that, I had them over and I was entertaining them for a bit that night. So anyways, tonight we had a farewell dinner, and then I made it back in time to do the show with Jess. But I'm very happy to be here after a little bit of about a week-long hiatus because we didn't do a show Thursday and we didn't do a show Tuesday. So that's what I was saying. I was like, I was jonesing to kind of do the show because it's been a little bit.
Yeah, and she couldn't see the board and couldn't see that we were like 3 seconds back, about to come back from break.
Exactly.
So my bad for not trying to yell at her a little bit or bring up the music. But anyway, we made it work. All right.
Our listeners are pretty lax about it all. It's whatever.
I found one more good Rick clip from when somebody called in today trying to break down all that audio over 2 days and soon to be 3. Well, this goes to show how much, Jen, you were saying we're a family. Here you go.
Looks like we have Alan Ray on the line. Not sure what you want to talk about because they haven't put the notes in yet. I think all of a sudden the phone lines are going nuts.
He wants to talk about medical marijuana.
All right, go ahead, Al.
Hey, Rowdy Rick, how you doing, brother?
I knew it was you, man. I mean, I've had all kinds of people that listen to my podcast calling in while I'm on the air over here. This is awesome. Man, how you doing?
But if that doesn't show that he has a following, I know I've called in. Would you believe even Ann called in on day 1?
No joke. She never goes on.
She called in.
That is really cool. And for anybody that, most of our people probably recognize the name Alan Ray. He did the Hardcore Patriot. Before that, he did the 5-Minute Patriot. And so,
and he does
another
Third Rail
member
Ramblers.
of the kind of, what?
Isn't he part of the Third Rail Ramblers?
Yes, he is. He is the singer and collaborator on the Third Rail Ramblers. So all in the fam.
And it's the fact that Alan Ray's called in. I've called in. Ron says he's going to try and call in tomorrow.
You know, I am going to be at the Resurgent gathering. If anybody didn't know, like it's the Resurgent is the latest online publication by Eric Erickson, and he has a slew of great writers that also write
at 6 a.m.
all sorts of other venues. Yeah, you know, Red State, and even some people that have been at National Review and been on Reason.com, and like all these places. He's got a great team of writers and people out there for him. So he is having a gathering here in Austin this weekend called the Resurgent Gathering. Abbott's speaking, Cruz is speaking, Perry's speaking. We've even got Carly Fiorina, all these people. And so I'm going to be going this tomorrow and Saturday. I'll be at all of that. But so I will be on the road at, 6:45 a.m. So I may have to call in. We'll just see what happens.
I'll give you the number when we get off air.
Yes!
All right. But in the meantime, I do have another sound clip. And Jen, I reacted to this the other day, but let's get your take on it and then we can discuss it. And this is Senator Burr.
The Russians conducted a structured influence campaign using U.S.-based social media platforms and others to target the American people using divisive issues such as race, immigration, and sexual orientation. That campaign is still active today. They didn't do it because they have political leanings to the right or to the left, but because they care about our elections, but rather because a weak America is good for Russia. Some feel that we as society are sitting in a burning room, calmly drinking a cup of coffee, telling ourselves this is fine. That's not fine, and that's not the case. We should no longer be talking about if the Russians attempted to interfere with American society. They've been doing it since the days of the Soviet Union, and they're still doing it today.
Okay, so I have a few thoughts on this. Number one, and everybody chill out for a second before you start screaming at me, he's right. He is right in the regard that they have been trying to influence. Of course they have. By the way, we have too in various other international elections. So this is not exactly a new thing. And like he said, it dates back to the days of the Soviet Union and whatnot. Like we just have a new platform. We have a new medium for them to be able to, overly exert some sort of influence that hasn't always been present. But like I said, this has been something that has gone on between quite a few different countries all over this globe for a very long time. Of course, we want to influence things to benefit us and then benefit them. The second thing I would like to say is that, everybody needs to remember that influence does not mean hacking. Influence does not mean changing votes. Influence does not mean that they were able to infiltrate the actual system that determined an outcome. And I think people get lost on that a little bit when we talk about someone influencing an election. I also agree that if at all possible, we should not put up with it. If we can eliminate that kind of influence, then we should try, but not at the expense of the American people. And I'm afraid with social media that means that in order to try to eliminate outside influence and other kinds of social media campaigns, that will mean limiting the speech, the freedom, and the overall vitality of the average American person.
Well, just to remind folks, our hands aren't clean. Approximately 81 times from 1946 to 2000. And this is according to Don Levin of Carnegie Mellon University. The U.S. has attempted to influence presidential elections in other countries. This doesn't include military coups, regime change efforts, following the election of candidates the U.S. didn't think Iran, Guatemala, or Chile. It also doesn't include general assistance with election processes such as election monitoring. I mean, and don't forget, Obama sent people to interfere in Israel's election. You want an early
Yes,
Example,
absolutely. Everyone always forgets about that.
Italy, in 1948, we were all over Italy's election. And our actions probably changed the outcome. And yeah, that's a long time ago, but
It's still
are
pertinent.
not innocent.
Right. It's still pertinent. And you know what? I don't necessarily think I wish that none of this happened at all so that it could solely be on each country's sovereign, populace to be able to decide what they decide. But especially now, we live in an age of such mass media and in such various different mediums that our information is freely passed in such a way that it will never be bottled back, right? We cannot put the genie back in the bottle. And I think in a lot of ways, it's a very, very good thing when we're not talking about just specifically elections. And we can't just say that. We can't go, oh, it's okay for this, but it's not okay for elections, because here's the deal. Like, you can't do one without, or you can't strangle one without strangling the other. So, we kind of have to give and take here and go, okay, well, it's really good in the fact that we're able to, absolutely expose atrocities. We're able to more readily communicate in the field about things that are going on various fronts, that we are able to, expose also not just atrocities, but expose corruption, expose various dictators and whatever. So, it comes with the territory of this kind of new information age and the new way in which we communicate. And I think it's mostly good, but there's going to be some bad.
All right, Jen, I got a question for you because I was thinking about what you were saying. When you were a kid, you probably rode a bike without a helmet, maybe had a pocket knife. You do live in Texas. And right. You probably played with things like firecrackers, firearms, not played with firearms, but you handled them at a young age.
Right.
You're still here.
Right. Well, and I learned various things. You learned how to start a fire. You learned various different first aid and emergency techniques and all these things, which all could be used in a negative sense too. But the point is that it could also be really positive. So you have to you have to do a risk assessment and go, does the good outweigh the bad? Does the positive outweigh the negative? Does the risk, is it worth the reward?
Is the reward worth the risk? Yeah. Now, but here's the thing. Common sense, logic, and risk-reward analysis seems to have gone the way of the dodo bird. I mean, if you don't like what someone's saying on Twitter, don't get 50 of your friends together and report them. Mute them. You'll never hear from them again.
Right.
Unless
we
they
have
tag
tools.
You.
We have tools to use, especially on these new mediums. We have tools to use in order to, without the platform silencing those voices outright, unless there is actually a direct violent threat, which there have been. And I think that those platforms are right to regulate those. But when you're just talking about people being offended and you're talking about people speaking uncouthly, then, you have the right to silence them for your own good. And the platform doesn't have to do it for you. You can mute, you can block. You can eradicate them from your daily conversations so that you don't have that kind of influence and negativity in your life. So please, people, use that at first as your first defense. Then if they start seeking you out in other manners and other ways, you have avenues to explore that as well and to deal with them on those fronts. But I'm really tired of this kind of outrage mob deal, which kind of leads me into this whole thing with the newest hire for the editorial board at the New York Times, who has some very awful tweets in her past.
Well, since I don't know a thing about it, since I don't know a thing about it, I'm just having to play catch up here, because yes. Well, let's just put it this way: the biggest propaganda tweets I've had to deal with was either Press TV, read Iranian state news, or Pyongyang.
Right. Well, so this is, this is Sarah Young, and she's a writer and mostly an opinion-based writer, and she is recently hired by the editorial board of the New York Times. So let's just think about what the editorial board means. A lot of people are thinking that means that she is going to be actually active in editing the content of all things New York Times, and that's not true. She is going to be an opinion writer for the opinion section of New York Times. They usually admit all of these people to the editorial board. There are a couple exceptions, but mostly. And she has some very questionable tweets. Let's go through a few. Are white people genetically predisposed to burn faster in the sun, thus logically being only fit to live underground like groveling goblins? Then she says, oh man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men. Then she did #cancel white people. And it says, have you ever tried to figure out all the things that white people are allowed to do that aren't cultural appropriation? There's literally nothing. Like skiing maybe, and maybe golf. White people aren't even allowed to have polo. Did you know that? Like, don't you just feel bad? Why can't we give white people a break? Lacrosse isn't for white people either. It must be so boring to be white. They suck. Then number 1, white men are bull beep. 2, no one cares about women. 3, you can't threaten anyone on the internet except cops. And then it's like, I just realized why I can't stand watching Breaking Bad.
Whoa. You can't threaten anyone on the internet?
No, you can. You can threaten anyone on the internet except cops.
Okay.
Which she's kind of equating to white men. Then she says, I just realized why I can't stand watching Breaking Bad or Battlestar Galactica. The premise of both is just white people being miserable. White people have stopped breeding. You'll all go extinct soon. This was my plan all along. Yeah. So, and I dare you to get on Wikipedia and play things white people can definitely take credit for. It's really hard. They've got nothing.
I think I got it.
Yeah.
She is by far not a fan of the white Anglo-Saxon.
Right. So when I think about this, and a lot of people got really...
Isn't when people rant and rave and scream, whether it's on podcasts, because Rick's known for his rants, isn't that what gets the attention? Isn't that what sells newspapers, makes headlines, and drives people crazy?
Well, like a lot of people pointed out to her, the people that hired her were old white men. So, okay. But also, I just want to say that, so there became this outrage, right? And everybody's like freaking out and all these things are being said. And she didn't do herself any favors because she didn't really apologize. She kind of went into I call it a non-apology. She went into non-apology mode and claimed that she made all these statements because she is harassed so much online. And so she was just mimicking kind of the rhetoric of the people who harass her. And that wasn't the best thing to do, but it is what it is. And so she'll be better from now on. And then the New York Times put out a statement that said essentially the same thing. They said, oh, we vetted this and we talked to her earnestly about it.
But
yeah.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Well, not only that, but there is no instance of any of these being in response to her harassers. They are solo tweets that she has put out. And now maybe and she's tried to say that some of them were satire and they were poking fun. And okay, so let's even go with that. Let's say that they were. So now racial jokes are okay if they're against a certain demographic, which we pretty much know to be the case now in leftist world. But yeah.
Jen, I gotta say, I'm Jewish. I love a good Jew joke. I think they're hilarious. Right. I mean, the funny ones are great.
Well, that's the thing. So most of us normals out here can appreciate and laugh at quite a few things that poke fun at our own, right? We should be able to. That's a healthy conscience. That's a healthy way of being, is to be able to laugh, especially at stereotypes and stuff. Like, okay, whatever, as long as they're not crude and really, obviously like to the core awful. But
Unless they're so bad they make you laugh because they're like stupid dad joke. You know, like why did the Jewish? You know, did you know that the Jewish car stops on a dime? It has to pick it up, doesn't it?
There you go. Well, so it's like, okay, the problem is the standard here. And the standard has been, from those on the side that get overly offended about a lot of different kinds of jokes and tweets, that it's not okay it's okay for me, but not for thee. And that's where I have a problem. So my stance on this thing with her is not that I want the outrage mob to pressure the New York Times to fire her because of the outrage mob. If they want to fire her based on the merit of her opinion, which is what she's hired for, if they want to fire her based on the merit of her opinion they were not previously aware of, then they are free to do that. If they want to keep her on despite knowing it, they are free to do that. And I don't want anyone in any capacity getting fired based on a bunch of people rising up and saying, this offends me and I'm mad about it, because it happens both ways. And so you can't be mad about your favorite little writer or commentary person or, even journalist or whatever that has an obvious bias getting fired from a major news media outlet for those opinions. And then turn around and say, no, but this person should too. I get the tit for tat, and I get being angry in that front because they're inconsistent. And it's okay to be upset about inconsistency. But if you were not okay with certain people getting fired for seemingly kind of dumb things and things they said and jokes and tweets and whatever.
Oh, you mean like Roseanne Barr got fired for a tweet?
Roseanne Barr, Kevin Williamson with The Atlantic. I mean, like
a baseball player got put up for trade the other day because he quote unquote threw a temper tantrum on the mound and threw his glove down.
Right. So all I'm saying is, for me, I do not agree with the outrage mob that is calling for her firing. What I am not okay with is the ridiculous defense by those in media of her and claiming it's different because. Why is it different? Well, just because we like her and her kind of ugly is okay and your kind of ugly is not okay. And you can't equate the two because I said so. So that is what I have a problem with. The inconsistency, the hypocrisy. And I am fully fine with a private industry. I don't want any private business to acquiesce to pressures by some sort of outrage mob. But I also defend that business's right to do that on their own, to hire or fire, whatever they want to do. And I'm kind of sick of the hypocrisy on both sides about this kind of thing where they go, well, this person should be fired. Oh, but when my person does it, it's okay. And quite a few of the things are not even comparable. Kevin Williams's comments were not comparable to these blatantly racially dividing comments. So it's not on the same level. It's not comparable. But what is comparable is the quote unquote outrage mob going after a publication and demanding something from them and demanding they give in or else. And that I'm not cool with.
Jen, I got a quick question for you because we are quickly coming up on the end of the show. Do you mind running over for a few minutes?
Sure.
Because I have a topic that would tie into this.
Okay.
And this is the perfect time to bring it up. All right. What would you say if I said, I believe our First Amendment rights are being trampled on by political correctness?
I would say yes.
Because, sorry, how many times have you wanted to say something on Twitter but didn't want to deal with the hailstorm that would come with it?
Right. And I would argue that it's not 100% our First Amendment rights because it's not being impeded upon by the actual government, but it is a part of our cultural First Amendment rights. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that. Now,
so like culturally, what we view as
rules,
first,
but those are nowhere near as strict as what you'll face if you say that you support President Trump's building of a border wall, for example, but you still want the Mueller investigation to continue. You will be burned at the social media stake.
Right. So here's my deal. If a company has a policy where you are not, you have agreed to their contract and paying you, that you are not allowed to speak under your given name about certain things, like, say, politics. Hell, I don't even care if they're like, you can't talk about what team you like in sports, which, by the way, a lot of athletic departments do. Like, if you are if you are on staff at a certain athletic department, but your heart at A&M, but your heart is at LSU, you can't express. You may not be able to. I'm not saying you can't, but you may not be able to, under your contract, express support for LSU in ways that aren't just general camaraderie of the conference. So these are all things that we agree to when we sign on to different jobs. And while that may seem stifling in some ways, that is not necessarily a First Amendment violation as read under your work contract. But do I think that it is in a lot of people's best interest, a lot of companies' best interest to do that? No, I don't. I don't, especially when it comes to politics. As long as they are reading within the guidelines of those mediums that they're speaking on, and they are not using, violent or otherwise derogatory rhetoric. And I think we could do well to get away from all of these pseudo standards that we put upon anyone and everyone, including saying, I'm going to vote for Trump. Oh, now you should be fired. No. That's BS. And as long as it's not stipulated in their employee contract, they should be free to say those things if they want to and not be endlessly harassed and have people call for their firing. It's ridiculous.
I agree with you. It's absolutely ridiculous. However, do you know how many freedoms our men and women in uniform give up?
Absolutely.
In order to serve? And
absolutely.
They willingly do so. It is an all-volunteer force. And I know my own husband has to be careful when he joins me on air, which is very rare, but he will on occasion. He did something with Doc, Judy Elmore, for Conversations in Science, discussing the training that the military gives for defense protection against chemical or biological warfare. Now, that wasn't going to get him in any trouble because there's no politics in it. Right. But he still has to be careful. And you notice I never give out his last name. And I've made it perfectly clear that Jesse is a pen name or a pseudonym or a stage name, whatever you want to call it. It is not my real name. So you can rant and rave at me all you want. You can search the military for that name, and if you find it, well, guess what? It's not me.
Yep. Yeah, and exactly.
It's one of those things. What drives me crazy is when someone says, "Oh, well, your child can't dress up in X Halloween costume. Your child can't be an Indian princess because you're not Native American." Oh, stuff it. It's what my 5-year-old wants to be. Take a long walk off a short plank. She's not hurting anyone. In fact, as long as it's a reasonably appropriate costume, what do you care?
It's funny you bring up the Indian part because, as most of our listeners will know, we talked about it a few weeks ago when I just got back from there. I grew up in a family where we have always been told that we are descendant from Native Americans, specifically Cherokee, maybe a few other mixed in. And we're in the process of figuring out how true that is. I have done quite a bit of back work on the family tree that it at least seems like that is at least somewhat true. I mean, I have a great-great-great-grandmother named Pocahontas, not the Pocahontas, just her name is Pocahontas. And so that does seem to be true. But part of my family tradition, since way before I was born, was that in my grandmother's hometown, there is a Comanche Nation Indian powwow held the second or third weekend in July, however it falls, every year for going on like 50 years or something. And they also, because they are one of the most organized organizations, they have been able to, they invite in all of the smaller tribes in the area, and everyone comes together and has this powwow, and it is complete with, you know, all the tables and things selling homemade jewelry. People actually camp out there. It's a campsite with legit teepees, some in regular tents and campers and whatever else, and making traditional Indian food. And there is dancing. There are awards given for the various different dance competitions, for the war dancing, the women's dancing, the council dance, like all these different things.
I think that's a great thing. And if you attend it,
there are drummers in the middle. There are drummers in the middle the entire time. They rotate out. It's this huge tradition. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing, and it is overwhelmingly true, you know, Native American Indians that are in attendance. And then there's some people like my family that may have some of that in their background, but they're so welcoming of all of us. And we go and do this all the time. And since I was little, like, I have my own Indian shawls, or all of us do. My grandmother, she keeps them in her closet. There is a whole row of Indian shawls, and we all have ours. And when we go to the powwow, we wear them, and you know, a lot of times we get out there and we actually dance with them. We've learned quite a few of the traditional dances, and this is just part of my history. This is a part of my family tradition, whether or not I'm actually blood. This is a part of my family tradition and part of my family history, and a part of the people that we have come to, you know, be a community with and love and adore. And my son is 5 years old, and since he was 2, has looked forward to Indian fry bread every freaking summer. And he's like, when do I get Indian fry bread? And, you know, just like traditional and Indian tacos and like all of these things. And it's a part of us. And cultural appropriation be damned. If it turns out by DNA that we actually are not that, well, I would challenge any of you that we are not a part of that community, that we are not a part of that tradition, that it is not a part of us, and that they have ingratiated themselves to us and us them, and it is not at all a divisive thing. There is no purity test whatsoever. They are welcoming, they are loving, and we to them. And I think that everyone could do well to learn some sort of lesson about that when you talk about silly things like, you know, I understand that there can be actually hurtful cultural appropriation. I'm not going to deny that there are people that use it in a very bad way, but that is so few and far between from the people that are just looking to have a good time, enjoy something, appreciate a culture that is not theirs, or maybe is theirs and they don't even know. Whatever. It is not something to be disparaged. And I think it's actually more divisive to try to shoo people away from that because you don't fit that particular genetic mold than it is to encourage people to participate and you know, learn and be a part of something so beautiful.
I think it's wonderful that your family attends this every year, whether there's Native American blood in your background or not. I think it's fantastic because it's a way of embracing the Native American culture, whether you're biologically part of it or not. Newsflash, right. I wasn't born Jewish. I'm what they call a Jew by choice, or a convert.
And that is such a great example that people often forget about when we talk about appropriation. So many of various religions are ethnically based, but have a significant portion that are chosen, right? That they have made the decision to convert to Judaism, to convert to Islam, to convert, you know, and it has nothing to do with blood. It has everything to do with belief, with community, with God, with any of their number of reasons why they go that route. And it is age old. It is age old. This is not a modern thing. This has been going on for centuries, and in some cases, millennia.
The one thing I have to say is, and I'm blanking on her name, of course, right now, the female member of Congress who thought she was Native.
Elizabeth Warren.
Yes. Elizabeth Warren. My objection with her is because she checked the box Native American to get more scholarships or easier entrance to to university and get that advantage that she wasn't necessarily entitled to. Now, did she know she wasn't necessarily entitled? I think she actually had a pretty good clue, but figured she'd give it a shot and see if anybody ever noticed. Now, granted, she did that years ago, and she, I feel, has been appropriately burned at the stake for the mistake.
Yes. Yes.
Now, I will have to say that when you talk about women and checking boxes and trying to get into things, I want to make you aware of an international story. I don't know if you heard about it. What would you say if a university said no more than 30% of successful applicants were allowed to be women? Not too happy, huh?
No.
Well, Tokyo Medical University began altering results in 2011 to ensure under 30% of successful applicants will be women. And their reason given was that most women don't go on to practice medicine and employment. Many female students graduate, end up leaving the actual medical practice to give birth and raise children.
Ooh, that is not good. You know what? This actually reminds me of a conversation I had with someone in, she will remain unnamed.
Why don't we just call her Sally?
A part of my family. And after we had a very great visit together, I stayed with her for 4 days, and we got to know each other a lot better than we had before that. And we had all these discussions, and we talked a lot about, we're very close in age, so we talked a lot about our education. And she is very left-leaning. I'm obviously very right-leaning, but we talked a lot about politics and everything, and it still worked out really well, and we had a great time. And but one of the things that really rubbed me wrong that she said was after I told her about we talked extensively about our undergrad education. And some of the things I told her about mine, she was like, oh my gosh, because I graduated from the University of Texas. She quickly realized that it is not called a public Ivy for no reason because of what I explained to her, the things that I had to do to graduate and the courses I had to take and the kind of load that was on. And various, especially the senior things that I had to do in order to obtain my degree. No matter what my GPA was, I had to accomplish quite a few different big feats, including a 50-page paper, which was basically a thesis, and a 45-minute presentation, in addition to 45 minutes of interviews on the topic that I was doing, and provide all sorts of constructive notes and all of these things. And she was like, oh my God, because she's in grad school right now. And she's like, oh my God, you basically got a master's in an undergrad. And I was like, well, this is why, and I didn't know this quite so much at the time until I was around a lot of other people that graduated from a lot of other universities, it's high up there on the list for a lot of reasons. And this is one of them, And she said to me, so I guess I'm just confused. And I said, about what? And she said, well, then you have this amazing education. Why would you waste it by being mostly, I do independent contracting for my events and everything, but why would you waste it on being a stay-at-home mom?
Whoa, time out. Being a mom is the hardest job in the world.
So I just said to her, and I knew she didn't mean it in a derogatory way. She meant it she didn't mean for it to come off that way. She's speaking from a purely academic standpoint because she's really going to probably spend her entire life in academics. And I just said, well, who better to raise my child than someone that is so thoroughly educated? And she just looked at me and was like, well, okay. Yeah. Okay. I go, how many preschool teachers or daycare teachers do you know that have an undergrad from a top 10 university? How many preschool or daycare teachers do you know that have a master's or have a, just extended education. And I'm not trying to put down daycare or preschool teachers. I'm just saying the qualifications for holding those positions is not that. Right? It is not that you have to have, in most cases, there are a few very coveted schools, but in most cases, it is not that you have to have even a bachelor's degree, much less a master's. And so I said, so he would be better if I was working and contributing, quote unquote, to society with my, knowledge and education and smarts, then he would be better going to some of these people than being with me on a day-to-day basis where I can impugn on him my knowledge. And she was like, oh, crap. I never thought about it that way. And I was like, now you will. Now you will. The second that you question one of your friends on Facebook that's a stay-at-home mom that you watched her go through 2 degrees or 1 degree or whatever, but that she was smart and intelligent and you knew that she had all these talents, and then you wonder why she's a stay-at-home mom, think about that. Think about the fact that maybe who better to raise and teach her child and stimulate her child. And she went, holy crap, oh my gosh, you just blew my world. That just blew my mind.
I think you did an excellent way of explaining it, because I'm sorry, who better to raise your child than you? And
Right. No matter of level of education or not, who better to raise your child than you? But if you're going to bring up education, then let's talk about that too. And here's the deal. Who better to educate my child until they're of school age than myself, who is highly educated,
I think it's great. I really do, because goodness knows, I can't tell you the number of times my mom, who I grew up with a registered nurse for a mother. I can't tell you the number of times I grew up and we were spared trips to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
I was spared trips to the doctor's office. My mom had the relationship with enough doctors she could call and say, listen, she's got a sore throat. I'm going to throw some Tylenol on her, send her to school. Can you call in some antibiotics? Here's the signs and symptoms, blah, blah, blah. It's been going on for this long. And she'd come by at lunch and give me the dose of medication so I could get started on it. And I didn't have to miss school. I didn't have to miss that field trip. I didn't have to fill in the blank, because
and she had the education and she had the know-all to be able for them to trust her in her diagnosis.
Exactly. Now, I'm not a mother. I don't have children, but I can honestly say I wouldn't want anybody else raising my kids if I did have them. And when you turn your child over to a daycare center, I mean, if you're working and you have to put your child in daycare because you have to work to put food on the table, that is one thing. But if you do it
100%.
But if you do it just so you can have more me time or so you can get a job that your family doesn't need you to have,
or because for some reason you think that they might be able to do a better job than you, then I think you're kind of fundamentally misunderstanding the parental role. But I am not going to harp on people that choose daycare and choose, preschool in various forms and whatever. I'm really not. That's not my intention.
I even know some spouses with small children who, while their husband's deployed, they are granted so many hours of free daycare a month by the military system on their base, just so they can get that respite, that break, so they can go to the grocery store without a screaming kid.
Sure.
So they can have that doctor's appointment. And
sure. And I am not knocking any of that, because I think that it is completely valid. It is a valid and needed and warranted service in our society. And I am not knocking on daycare centers. I'm not knocking on preschools. I am not knocking on the people that give their time and effort to those things. All I'm saying is that when someone poses a question to me, like I am the one being weird by not doing this, and then also like I'm sacrificing a piece of myself and that I could be better utilized elsewhere, I say, hell no. I am best utilized in investing in my child. I am best utilized in using my worldly experience, because sometimes what I get is they're like, well, you're from Texas and I'm like, no, honey. I was partially raised in California. Then I was mostly raised in Texas. Then I lived in New York City. Then I lived in LA. Then I lived in Europe. And I came back and went to college, went to a very hard college and graduated in high regard, made dean's list all the time. Like, no. You are not going to belittle me, and you're not going to tear me down about my life choice that I have chosen, and I am thankful. And I still have to supplement. I still have things that I do that I supplement, and I still have my own event management career, as everybody else knows. But I have made the conscious choice to not be working 50, 60 hours a week, because I am lucky that I don't have to with my A, supplement and B, my husband's job, that I get the luxury of saying I am going to be in charge of the information my child is getting, at least until 5 or 6 years old.
And I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad that you were able to had the brains and the forethought and the quick wit to make such a reasoned, logical argument and put your cousin in her place.
Yeah, it was like it took me off guard, and I, you know what, and she was really awesome about it after I explained my side of it, and then she's like, oh, okay, I get it. But again, she was childless, she's not married, and I don't fault her for not quite getting it. But we had a constructive conversation. The immediate question was a little bit offensive, and I wanted to smack her, but I realized she wasn't coming at it with animus, right? Like, she wasn't hostile. She was just, it truly boggled her, and from her point, her perspective. And so being able to talk that out with her, and then she was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought about it that way. And that's why I said, okay, so the next time that you see one of your high school friends or college friends or whoever, that you're like, oh my God, they're so smart. Why aren't they doing something else? But instead they're at home raising 3 kids. Think about that. Look at them differently. Consider a different perspective. And she was really receptive to it, and was also kind of like, oh my gosh, this just blew up my worldview, But that's what's really cool, I think, in bringing it back to Jen and Rick. I think that's what's really cool about myself and about Rick and about you, Jesse, and about this station, is that there are a lot of people here that consider these kinds of things, that we have reasonable, rational conversations with people, and that we are able to express ourselves in a way that does not have a lot of doesn't have to devolve into a screaming match of insane, volatile kind of speech and just shouting over each other and whatever. Like, you can have these reasonable and rational conversations if you can choose to be an adult, and hopefully the person that you're talking to is also going to act as an adult and actually listen. And I think that we have a lot of people here that are doing that kind of thing on a daily basis. So I would hope that everyone would go seek out and listen to everyone's shows, because there's a lot to be learned. And I think we all have a lot of different personalities, and we have a lot of different approaches, but we have a lot of that in common, which is why I really like this family.
There is so much on this station I don't think people realize. There's conversations in science. There's Jesse's Coffee Shop. Yes, it's one of my shows, but I talk about books and authors. Oh my gosh,
it's so good, and you've gotten some really good ones on.
I know, and that show is my mental floss. It is my mental and emotional break, because quite frankly, day after day about talking about what the terrorists are doing in the Middle East, just what Iran's up to and what
North Korea's draining.
It is mentally, emotionally, and physical draining. And this way I can save my Friday night time slot, have my show, and still relax. And it's just one of those, it's an absolutely amazing thing. And one of the amazing things that actually happened a couple months back on Twitter, I actually had a rational conversation about a controversial topic, and I don't even remember what it was, a few months ago. And the fact that the both of us, from opposite sides of this issue, had a very calm, reasonable conversation thread that went on for over 20 tweets exchanged between the two of us without anybody name-calling, anybody going all caps, anybody throwing insults, and back and forth. It was just absolutely wonderful. And it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be, and this is what I want people to think about. There's so much divisiveness. There's so much hate going on. And Rick has been really good about this over the years. You know, he had the show Finding Common Ground. He's also worked with interviewed and worked with various other people on at least somewhat politically opposite sides. And sometimes he and I are politically opposite on some things. But I wish that people would kind of understand that there are a lot of conversations to be had, and there are a lot of things that we can, really approach in a different way than just, I have my opinion and I'm going to scream at you about it and nothing will change my mind. And I don't even think that there needs to be minds changed necessarily, because there are a lot of deep-seated views and opinions, and they are valid, and that's okay. But to be able to actually, discuss a topic in a way that doesn't devolve into name-calling and hatred is something to be valued right now. And I think there are a lot of people on this station that are doing those kinds of things and bringing up topics that media isn't talking about, and all sorts of variety here that I would like to highlight and also compliment everyone on KLRNRadio.com, because I think it's really a good group of people, and I think that there's a lot of people here that are willing to be open and express things honestly and think analytically and keep a lot of that outrage, emotion, just crazy driven bias in check.
There is something I want to bring up, and I don't know if you've heard about it, but it is a very dangerous thing going around WhatsApp.
Okay.
It is called the Momo Challenge. And basically in WhatsApp, you add this contact. And the contact is called Momo. What that contact then does is encourage you to commit self-harm or suicide. And it is guised as a game.
Mm.
And this is similar to the Blue Whale Challenge and the Slender Man thing that went on a few years ago, where people have actually acted out on it. Now, so far, it's only impacted seriously other countries. However, this started on Facebook, and the new challenge is aimed at children and young people. And it's a very terrifying image of a woman, and she invites those who see her to write to her through WhatsApp. And then she threatens to curse the user if they do not respond. And it's one of those things, please, 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 stay away from this. This is nothing more than a disaster looking for a place to happen.
Yeah.
And it just came across my news feeds a few minutes ago, but it was from a very reputable, trustworthy source. So I felt the need to pass it along. And when you've got multiple governments putting out on their social media, don't do this. You've got the Mexican police, you've got the Chilean authorities, you've got Spanish authorities, all going, Buenos Aires, all going, stay away. I just felt the need to bring it up real quick as we're wrapping up. So, please don't add Momo. I'll get you the link. Please don't add Momo on social media, but you can add KLRN Radio on Twitter. And Jen, why don't you remind people where they can hang out with you when you're not on the air with hanging out with me or Rick or anybody else?
Yes, come follow me on Twitter at jhomestead, and please follow at Misfits Politics and misfitspolitics.com. We do a lot of political stuff, but we also encourage all sorts of things. We've had pieces on music, we've had pieces on food, we've had pieces on, various situations people are going through. One of our most popular posts is one of my favorite people on this planet, who is basically kind of a co-founder with me at Ann Alexander. She wrote about her autistic son and his view as he's a teenager now, his view of his autism. And there's just a lot to be had there. So please go visit misfitspolitics.com. We are always taking contributions. We don't really have a set standard. It's kind of go with the flow. We read it. We may send it back to you to tweak it a little bit or something, or we may just say this isn't really, for this. That rarely happens, I will say. It's only been when it kind of included slandering someone or something like that. But mostly we encourage all kinds of topics and writing. So even if you don't feel like you have the writing chops, we have an amazing editor in Anne who does this professionally. So please send us your contributions. If you have anything to say, feel free to rebut us on whatever you want to, and always join us for our Misfit Mischief on Friday nights. Tomorrow night we'll have it kicking off at 8:30 Eastern, so 7:30 Central. And we just aim to have a lot of fun, and then also stoke a little bit of, just a little bit of conversation, and got some smart people over there. And like I said, we're welcoming of everyone. So please take a look at it and contribute if you would like.
All right. And for those of you looking to try, by the way, thank you for the compliment on Jesse's Coffee Shop. I have had some really fantastic authors, some of whom you'd probably never heard of before.
Yeah, no, one of them, oh shoot, I'd have to look back at what it was, because now, of course, I can't remember. But there was one of them that you pointed to, and I was like, oh, and I brought it up to my extremely always reading everything father-in-law, and he was like, oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, I ordered the book on Amazon, and I'm in part of reading it. And I was like, oh, well, looky here. I was able to kind of have a conversation to relate to him and kind of impress him that I knew someone who interviewed this author. So that was really cool.
Oh, my coffee shop interviews. In fact, I did one today. Yes, I did an hour interview before taking a dinner break to do my show prep, to do my show, to then turn around and do this. So I've already done 3 hours. That's why there is no AOTR.
Yes. Well, we kind of went halfway through AOTR. So we kind of gave them a Jenn and Rick plus more. So we're,
a Jenn and Rick extended edition.
We're bonus territory here with the Thursday night Jenn and Jess show.
Exactly. So anyway, but I love it. And I'm working on getting more and more traditionally published, but of course I'll still take the self-published and indie published authors. I have no problem. I am gearing more towards fiction, but I love to have my guests. It's so amazing to do the author interviews because they're so much fun.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's a great little step away from some of the other stuff you do.
Oh, it is. And that's not to say I don't love doing Jesse's POV, because if I did, I wouldn't still be doing it. Because Jesse's POV allows me time to dig into, and trust me, I put more show prep into that show than anybody will ever know. I search through UK Parliament proceedings. I go through, read the English translations of Israeli laws. I'm constantly trolling North Korean propaganda sites, Iranian propaganda news sites. I don't check one news site, I check 30. And then I dig back and pull the history and piece it all together. And it's just, like I said, that show may take me more research, but I have to say, Justin Kinney makes a great guest when I'm having one of those, I need a break, but I still need a show. Justin, because I don't know if you know this or if you've ever listened to any of the show episodes with Justin, he's getting his PhD in terrorism and social media.
Ooh.
Yeah. Definitely a new international studies type of PhD. But it's just the fact that he has so much knowledge.
Yeah.
I love to be able to draw on that when he's on air with me.
Yeah, that is really cool.
But anyway, so it's just one of those things. I love doing both shows, but I need a break sometimes. And I'm finally starting to get coffee shop episodes recorded, so they will start appearing again. Yes, I was away from my studio longer than expected thanks to my recent move. Moves are so tiring.
You had such a big move, I know.
I did. But it's over, my studio's set up, and even Host Kitty has found a brand new kitty roost in the studio for him to hang out on. Oh, Host Kitty's always up to something, watching as he jumps onto top of filing cabinet.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, speaking of pets, my dog is coming undone at me because she needs to go out. So
all right,
I probably need to hop off.
I think we are done, and we will see you next time on the air somewhere, whether it's Tuesday with Jen and Rick, or you can catch Coffee Shop. I think there'll be a best of tomorrow night, and then I'll be back with POV on Monday.
Yay! This was a great show. Thank you so much for joining me, Jesse. It has been, I think it's been great, and I'm kind of glad that I was able to do so, and that you were able to do so, and so you didn't have to do your own AOTR, and we didn't have to leave that slot blank. We kind of went over and extended it into AOTR, and I've much needed a little bit of this time, and I really appreciate you joining me and making this happen.
Well, it was a pleasure, and I think we're gone.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I